It's an opportunity for you to retreat from your lives for just a few days and to remove the constant stimulation in your external environment that reminds you of who you think you are as a personality. To separate yourself from the people you know and the places you go and the things that you do at the exact same time every single day, long enough for you to be reminded of what you already know. And I want you to know that every time you learn something new, you make new connections in your brain. That's what learning is. Learning is forging new synaptic connections. And the Nobel Prize laureate, Kandel, in the year 2000, found that when people learn just one bit of information, they doubled the number of connections in their brain from 1,300 connections to 2,600 connections. But if they didn't review that information, if they didn't repeat it, if they didn't think about it, those circuits pruned apart within hours or days. All of this information that you were learning this weekend, if knowledge is power, then knowledge about yourself is self-empowerment. But all of this philosophical, theoretical, spiritual, intellectual knowledge and information is for you to do something with when you return back into your lives. And if you can take that information and apply it, personalize it, demonstrate it in some way, initiate that knowledge into action. If you get your behaviors to match your intentions, if you get your actions equal to your thoughts, if you get your mind and body working together, you are going to have a new experience. Now, when you're in the midst of an experience, all of your five senses plug you into the external environment. And as you're gathering all of this vital sensory data, all that information rushes back to your brain through 5 different sensory pathways. And it causes jungles of neurons to organize themselves into networks and patterns. The moment those neurons string into place, the brain makes a chemical, and that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And the moment you feel like a leader, the moment you feel like a patient parent, the moment you feel compassion, now you are teaching your body chemically to understand what your mind has intellectually understood. And in that moment, you are beginning to embody the truth of that philosophy. And if knowledge is for the mind, experience is for the body, you are embodying that information and signaling new genes in new ways, and you are rewriting your own biological program. But if you've done it once, it must mean you should be able to do it again. And if you can repeat an experience over and over again, at will, on command, you are going to neurochemically condition your mind and body to work as one. And when the mind and body merge as one, or the body now knows how to do it as well as the mind, now it's innate in you. It's automatic. It's second nature. It's easy. You've practiced it so many times that you don't even know how you do it. It's an automatic subconscious program. So our job on this journey is to go from philosopher to initiate to master, from knowledge to experience to wisdom, from mind to body to soul, from thinking to doing to being, to learning it in your head, practicing it with your hands, and knowing it by heart. And you and I have all the biological and neurological machinery to do this. And this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. And science has become the contemporary language of mysticism. In fact, science demystifies the mystical. And if you can combine a little quantum physics with a little neuroscience, with a little neuroendocrinology, with a little psychoneuroimmunology, a little epigenetics, do You know, they all point the finger at possibility. And people are beginning to not wait for crisis or trauma or disease or diagnosis or loss to get about the business of change in their life. Because you can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, which has been the old model of reality up until this point, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. Which would you like to do at this point? So then, I'm curious, how many people in this audience believe in the idea that the way you think has some effect on your body or your life? I'm just curious. You do, yes? Well, how many people actually woke up this morning and consciously created a future? You know why you don't do it? Because you don't believe it's true. If you knew that your thoughts created your reality, would you ever miss a day in creating the life that you want? And would you ever let any thought slip by your awareness that you didn't want to experience? Now, you told me that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, yes? Poke the person next to you, please. So you think, this is science now, 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day. 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before. Hint, because the same thoughts will always lead to the same choices. And the same choices will lead to the same behaviors. And the same behaviors will create the same experiences. And the same experiences produce the same emotions. And those same emotions drive your very same thoughts. And your biology, your neurocircuitry, your neurochemistry, your hormones, and even your genetic expression are equal to how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. So then if you wanted to create a new personal reality, a new life, you would have to change your personality, wouldn't you? Hello? Yes. Poke the person next to you again. Which means then you'd have to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. You'd have to become aware of your unconscious habits and behaviors and modify them. And then you'd have to look at those emotions that keep you anchored to the past and decide, do these emotions belong in my future? You see, most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. You're literally going to have to become someone else. And so, you can't run up to me and say, how come I'm not living in Santa Fe, New Mexico with my 3 dogs? Because I'll tell you, the personality who's living in Santa Fe, New Mexico looks nothing like that. So there's a principle in neuroscience that says that nerve cells that fire together. So if you keep thinking the same thoughts, making the same choices, demonstrating the same behaviors, creating the same experiences that stamp the same networks of neurons into the exact same patterns, all for the familiar feeling you call you, and you keep doing that over and over again, you are going to begin to hardwire your brain into a very finite signature. The most commonly fired, neurologically wired set of thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through frequent repetition. You've done it so many times that you begin to think within the box of your brain. So then, would you agree with me then that new thoughts should lead to new choices, and new choices should lead to new behaviors. Come on. And new behaviors should create new experiences. And new experiences should create new feelings and new emotions. And those new feelings and new emotions should inspire new thoughts, and that's called evolution. Yes? So then, you told me that you said that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny. So if you wake up in the morning, now reason this with me, feelings and emotions are the end product of past experiences. And you can remember experiences better because you can remember how they feel. So if you wake up in the morning and then you come back to your senses, and then you glance over at the person laying next to you and you say, "Who is that?" Then you say, wait. Let me just remember all my problems. Oh, whoa, now I feel like myself. Almost lost my mind there. Would you agree then? The moment you feel the familiar feeling called you, and those emotions drive your thoughts, you are thinking in the past. Because if you can't think greater than how you feel, or feelings have become the means of thinking, then you are thinking in the past. And your body, as the unconscious mind, does not know the difference in your life between an actual experience that creates an emotion and an emotion that you create by thought alone. To the body, it's exactly the same. So people then, the moment they feel that familiar emotion, and that emotion starts to activate circuits in their brain equal to that emotional state, they are now thinking and feeling in the past. And how you think and how you feel creates a state of being. Because thoughts are the vocabulary of the mind, and feelings are the vocabulary of the body. And how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. And the redundancy of thinking the same thoughts that turn on the same circuits in your brain to produce the same level of mind begins to signal another part of your brain to make a chemical for you to begin to feel exactly the way you were just thinking. And the moment you feel that feeling, the brain is monitoring the body, and it begins to generate more thoughts equal to that feeling, which creates more chemicals for you to feel the same way, and then think the same way, and feel the same way, and think the same way. And the redundancy of that cycle conditions the body to subconsciously become the mind of that emotion. And the moment that occurs, the body literally is in the past. And it's believing it's in the same past experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. The body literally is in the past. And you can't create a new future holding on to the emotions of the past. So then, would you agree with me? The moment you become conscious of your unconscious thoughts, the moment you become aware of your automatic habits and behaviors, the moment you observe those emotions that bring you to a lower denominator every day in your life, the moment you're becoming conscious of what you've been unconscious to, because 95% of who you are by the time you're 35 years old is a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, beliefs, perceptions, and attitudes that function like a subconscious computer program, that the moment you become conscious of what you've been unconscious to, now you're ready to change? Come on. And if you can observe those states of mind and body, it means you are no longer the program. You are the consciousness observing the program, and you begin to objectify your subjective self, because for the first time you are looking at yourself through the eyes of someone else. And because of the size of the frontal lobe, 40% of your entire brain, the crowning achievement of the human being, the latest piece of neurological machinery, the fact that you can pay attention to those states of mind and body means you could modify who you are to do a better job in life, and that's called neuroplasticity. And so then, here's the old self, and here's the new self, and you got to cross a river. And the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. And if a habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through frequent repetition, a habit is when you've done something so many times that your body now knows how to do it better than your brain. Would you agree then that the moment you decide to no longer complain, make excuses, feel sorry for yourself, talk about your best friend, judge your coworker, the moment you decide to do something differently and make a different choice, you just stepped into that river. And it's going to feel uncomfortable. Get ready is going to feel unfamiliar. There is going to be some uncertainty, and there is going to be some unpredictability. And some people would rather hold on to their guilt than step into the unknown. Some people would rather be unworthy and suffering than take a chance in possibility. And the moment you decide to make a different choice, the body, which has been conditioned emotionally to be the mind, wants to return back to familiar territory. And it starts sending signals back to the brain, and you just said, I'm no longer going to be a victim today. And the first 2 hours goes really well. But the body, which has been conditioned to be the mind, the servant is now the master. It starts sending signals back to the brain. And you know what it says. Why don't you start tomorrow? Tomorrow's a better day. I really can't do this, it's too hard. It's my ex-husband's fault. It's my father's fault. This doesn't feel right. And that's the body sending signals back to the brain, causing you to think in the past. And if you respond to that thought as if it's true, that thought will lead to the same choice, which will lead to the same behavior, which will create the same experience, which will produce the same emotion, and then you'll say, this feels right. No, it feels familiar. Crossing that river from the old self to the new self is the neurological, the biological, the chemical, the hormonal, genetic death of the old self. And people who step into that void, who step into that unknown, will say to me, Dr. Joe, I'm in the unknown. I can't predict my future. And I'll tell them the best way to predict your future is to create it. Not from the known, but from the unknown. And that place of unknown is the field of potentials called the quantum field. What thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors will you demonstrate in one day, one lifetime? And what if you were to rehearse those behaviors in your mind before you started your day? The latest research in neuroscience shows that you can change your brain just by thinking differently, which means now your brain is no longer a record of the past. It is now, in fact, a map to the future, because as you rehearse and plan your behaviors and review them in your mind, you begin to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like the event has already occurred. Now, great people like you, common people like you are doing the uncommon. And they are not waiting for their healing to feel wholeness. They are not waiting for their success to feel empowerment. They're not waiting for their new relationship to feel love, or their new job to feel gratitude, or their wealth to feel abundance, or the mystical moment to feel awe. That's the old model of reality of cause and effect. Waiting for something outside of you to change how you feel inside of you, to give you relief. The moment you feel better inside of you, you begin to pay attention to whoever or whatever caused it. And that event creates a memory, and that's Newtonian physics, the physics of predictability. But the quantum model of reality is about causing an effect, which means when you're in awe, you're going to have a mystical experience. When you feel empowered, you are going to create success. When you feel whole and satisfied with who you are, there will be a healing. When you feel so worthy and so abundant, you know your wealth is coming. And when you're in love with your life, in love with yourself, you will create an equal. And when you get up from your meditation or your internal practice in a state of gratitude, your body, as the unconscious mind, already accepts, believes, and surrenders to that outcome. And that job will come. And that's causing an effect in your life. And there isn't a person in this room that is so special to be excluded from that phenomenon. And the hardest part of all of this is making the time to do it. So then here's my question. Can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet, but you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the experience has already occurred? Latest research in neuroscience says it's possible. And can you fall in love with a future potential that already exists in the quantum field? And how many potentials exist in the quantum field? A few. Hello. Poke the person next to you. Come on, poke them. Can you fall in love with the future potential that already exists in the quantum field, so much so that your body, as the unconscious mind, is believing it's living in that future reality in the present moment, and you're signaling new genes in new ways to change your body to look like the event has already occurred? Latest research in epigenetics says it's absolutely possible. Now think about this. You're geniuses, right? If there's physical evidence in your brain and body to look like the event has already occurred, relax, because the event is going to find you. And it's going to come in a way that you least expect. Why? Because if you can expect it, it's nothing new. It's got to rock your world. It's got to catch you off guard. And it has to leave no doubt that what you did inside of you produced some effect outside of you. And when you can correlate the changes you made inside of you with the effect you produced outside of you, you're going to pay attention to what you did, and you're going to do it again. And when that experience lands in your lap and surprises you, and by the way, the brain learns by mistakes and surprises. Which would you like a few of? When that event catches you off guard and it lands in your lap and finds you, the joy and the excitement and the awe and the wonder and the freedom and the inspiration that's created, the energy of those emotions are going to inspire you to want to create again and again and again. And you will look back at your entire past and you won't want to change anything in your past because it brought you to that present moment. And that's the moment the past no longer exists. Are you with me? So then, most people You say to them, why are you so angry? Why are you so afraid? Why are you so judgmental? Why are you so bitter? What do you think they normally say? I am this way because of this event that happened to me 35 years ago. And from a biological standpoint, it means I haven't changed in 35 years. Are you with me? Yes. So then, Scientific American, a prestigious magazine, says that 50% of what you talk about in your past isn't even true. They call it creative memory. And if your brain is organized to reflect everything you know in your life, your brain is a record of the past. It's an artifact of everything you've learned and experienced to this moment. Would you agree with me then? That the moment you search for the familiar feeling called you, and those emotions are driving your thoughts, you are going to be predictable in your life. Because those thoughts will lead to the same behaviors, and those behaviors will create the same experiences, all to reaffirm the familiar feeling called you. And people get caught in these loops. They have experiences in their life that brand them emotionally. And there's a refractory period of chemicals that creates a change biologically in the body. And if you don't know how to control your emotional reactions, and you allow those emotions to linger for hours or days, you know what that's called? That's called a mood. What's wrong with you? I'm in a mood. Really? Here it comes. What happened? Well, I had this experience 9 days ago, and I'm having one long emotional reaction. And you keep that same refractory period going on for weeks or months. That's called a temperament. What's up with him? I don't know. Let's ask him. Why is he so bitter? Why are you so bitter? Well, I had this thing happen to me 7 months ago. I got fired from my job, and I'm memorizing my emotional reaction. And you keep that same refractory period going on for years on end. That's called the personality. And people wear their emotions on their sleeve, and they think that's who they are. So then, in order for a person to truly change, the question is, are you going to be defined by the memories of the past biologically, or are you going to be defined by a vision of the future? Because if you're waking up every single morning, what does everybody do now when they wake up in the morning? What's the first thing they do? Come on. Jennifer's eating carbohydrates again. It's on Facebook. Oh my God, my high school boyfriend's looking for me. I remember him from 11th grade. He was kind of cute. Then you check your WhatsApp, you check your text, you check your Facebook, you tweet, you Twitter, you check your Instagram, your Pinterest, Then you check the news, and now you're ready to start the day. Because it's no longer that your personality is creating your personal reality. All organisms in nature can tolerate short-term stress. A deer gets chased by a pack of coyotes. When it outruns the coyotes, it goes back to grazing and the event is over. And the definition of stress is when your brain and body are knocked out of balance, out of homeostasis. The stress response is what the body innately does to return itself back to order. So you're driving down the road, someone cuts you off, you jam on the brakes, you give them the finger, and then you settle back down and the event is over and boom, now everything's back to normal.
But what if it's your coworker sitting right next to you, and all day long you're turning on those chemicals because they're pushing all your emotional buttons? When you turn on the stress response and you can't turn it off, now you're headed for disease, because no organism in nature can live in emergency mode for that extended period of time. 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a memorized set of behaviors, emotional reactions, unconscious habits, hardwired attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions that function like a computer program. So then a person can say with their 5% of their conscious mind, I want to be healthy, I want to be happy, I want to be free. But the body's on a whole different program. A habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through repetition. So if you think about it, people wake up in the morning, they begin to think about their problems. Those problems are circuits of memories in the brain. Each one of those memories are connected to people and things at certain times and places. And if the brain is a record of the past, the moment they start their day, they're already thinking in the past. Each one of those memories has an emotion. Emotions are the end product of past experiences. So the moment they recall those memories of their problems, they all of a sudden feel unhappy, they feel sad, they feel pain. Now, how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So the person's entire state of being when they start their day is in the past. So what does that mean? The familiar past will sooner or later be predictable future. If you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, and you can't think greater than how you feel, or feelings have become the means of thinking, by very definition of emotions, you're thinking in the past. And for the most part, you're going to keep creating the same life. So then people grab their cell phone, they check their WhatsApp, they check their text, they check their emails, they check Facebook, they take a picture of their feet, they post it on Facebook, they tweet something, they do Instagram. They check the news, and now they feel really connected to everything that's known in their life. And then they go through a series of routine behaviors. They get out of bed on the same side, they go to the toilet, they get a cup of coffee, they take a shower, they get dressed, they drive to work the same way, they do the same things, they see the same people, they push the same emotional buttons, and that becomes the routine, and it becomes like a program. So now they've lost their free will to a program. And there's no unseen hand doing it to them. So when it comes time to change, the redundancy of that cycle becomes a subconscious program. Most people then wait for crisis or trauma or disease or diagnosis. They wait for loss, some tragedy to make up their mind to change. And my message is, why wait? And you can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. And I think right now, the cool thing is that people are waking up. The moment you start feeling abundant and worthy, you are generating wealth. The moment you're empowered and feel it, you're beginning to step towards your success. The moment you start feeling whole, your healing begins. And when you love yourself and you love all of life, you'll create an equal. And now you're causing an effect. And I think that's the difference between living as a victim in your world, saying, I am this way because of this person or that thing or this experience. They made me think and feel this way. When you switch that around, you become a creator of your world, and you start saying, my thinking and my feeling is changing an outcome in my life. And now that's a whole different game, and we start believing more that we're creators of reality. If you're not being defined by a vision of the future, then you're left with the old memories of the past, and you will be predictable in your life. If you can sit your body down and tell it to stay like an animal, stay right here. I'm going to feed you when we're done. You can get up and check your emails. You can do all your texts. But right now, you're going to sit there and obey me. When you do that properly, and you're not eating anything or smelling anything or tasting anything, you're not up experiencing and feeling anything, you would have to agree with me that you're being defined by a thought, right? So when the body wants to go back to its emotional past, and you become aware that your attention is on that emotion, and where you place your attention is where you place your energy, you're siphoning your energy out of the present moment into the past, and you become aware of that. And you settle your body back down in the present moment, because it's saying, well, it's 8 o'clock. You normally get upset because you're in traffic around this time. And here you are sitting, and we're used to feeling anger, and you're off schedule. Oh, it's 11 o'clock, and you usually check your emails and judge everybody. Well, the body's looking for that predictable chemical state. Every time you become aware that you're doing that, and your body is craving those emotions, and you settle it back down into the present moment, you're telling the body it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind, and now your will is getting greater than the program. And if you keep doing this over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, just like training a stallion or a dog, it's just going to say, I'm going to sit. And the moment that happens, when the body's no longer the mind, when it finally surrenders, there's a liberation of energy. We go from particle to wave, from matter to energy, and we free ourselves from the chains of those emotions that keep us in the familiar past. And so if you think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day, and we do, and 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before, and you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, your life's not going to change very much, because the same thought leads to the same choice leads to the same behavior creates the same experience, and the same experience produces the same emotion. So as you become familiar with the thoughts, the behaviors, and the emotions of the old self, you're retiring that old self. As you fire and wire new thoughts and condition the body into a new emotional state, if you do that enough times, it'll begin to become familiar to you. So it's so important, just like a garden. If you're planting a garden, you got to get rid of the weeds. You got to take the plants from the past year and you got to pull them out. The rocks that sift to the top that are like our emotional blocks, they have to be removed. The soil has to be tenderized and broken down. We have to make room to plant a new garden. So primarily, we learn the most about ourselves and others when we're uncomfortable. The stronger the emotional reaction you have to some experience in your life, the more you pay attention to the cause. And the moment the brain puts all of its attention on the cause, it takes a snapshot, and that's called a memory. So long-term memories are created from very highly emotional experiences. So what happens then is that people think neurologically within the circuitry of that experience, and they feel chemically within the boundaries of those emotions. And so when you have an emotional reaction to someone or something, most people think that they can't control their emotional reaction. Well, it turns out if you allow that emotional reaction, it's called a refractory period, to last for hours or days, that's called a mood. I say to someone, hey, what's up? You say, I'm in a mood. Well, why are you in a mood? Well, I had this thing happen to me 5 days ago, and I'm having one long emotional reaction. If you keep that same emotional reaction going on for weeks or months, that's called temperament. Why is he so bitter? I don't know, let's ask him. Why is he so bitter? Why are you bitter? Well, I had this thing happen to me 9 months ago. And if you keep that same emotional reaction going on for years on end, that's called a personality trait. And so learning how to shorten your refractory period of emotional reactions is really where the work starts. So then people, when they have an event, what they do is they keep recalling the event, because the emotions of stress hormones, the survival emotions, are saying pay attention to what happened because you want to be prepared if it happens again. Turns out most people spend 70% of their life living in survival and living in stress. So they're always anticipating the worst case scenario based on a past experience. And they're literally, out of the infinite potentials in the quantum field, they're selecting the worst possible outcome, and they're beginning to emotionally embrace it with fear. And they're conditioning their body into a state of fear. Do that enough times, body has a panic attack without you. You can't even predict it because it's programmed subconsciously. The hardest part about change is not making the same choices you did the day before, period. And the moment you decide to make a different choice, get ready, because it's going to feel uncomfortable. I think that the bigger thing is that we keep firing and wiring those circuits. They become more hardwired. So you have a thought and then the program runs. But it's the emotion that follows the thought. If you have a fearful thought, you're going to feel anxiety. The moment you feel anxiety, your brain's checking in with your body and saying, yeah, you're pretty anxious. So then you start thinking more corresponding thoughts equal to how you feel. So the body says, I want to return back to familiar territory. So the body starts influencing the mind, and it says, start tomorrow. You're too much like your mother. You'll never change. This isn't going to work for you. This doesn't feel right. And so if you respond to that thought as if it's true, that same thought will lead to the same choice, which will lead to the same behavior, which will create the same experience, which will produce the same emotion. And when people say to me, well, I can't predict my future. I'm in the unknown, and I always say the best way to predict your future is to create it. Not from the known, but from the unknown. What thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors do you want to demonstrate in one day? The act of rehearsing them mentally, closing your eyes, and rehearsing the action. By closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing some action, if you're truly present, the brain does not know the difference between what you're imaging and what you're experiencing in 3D world. So then you begin to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like the event has already occurred. Now, your brain is no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. And if you keep doing it, priming it that way, the hardware becomes a software program. And who knows, you just may start acting like a happy person. And then I think the hardest part is to teach our body emotionally what the future will feel like ahead of the actual experience.
If you believe that the way you think has some effect on your life, and you think the same thoughts every day, 90% of most people think the same thoughts as they did yesterday. Would you agree then that if you're not waking up every morning being defined by some vision of your future, then pretty much you are going to be living by the memories of your past, and you will be predictable in your life? Yes or no? Because the brain is a record of the past. And so, if you're not creating a new future, is it possible that you believe in your past more than you believe in your future? And is it possible then that many people don't want to create a new future because they're more in love with their past than they are with their future? In fact, they romance their past every single day. So then is it possible then that that person in the same brain circuitry and the same emotions of the past are viewing their life through the lens of the past? And they're not seeing things how they are. They're actually perceiving and seeing things how they are. And they're telling a story in their mind that's actually causing them to perceive life equal to that story. Are you with me still? So then you ask that person, so why are you this way? And they'd say, I'm so glad you asked, because I get to talk about my past. And as they talk about the incidents in their past, would you agree then that they're saying, that was the event that changed me, and I haven't actually been able to change since that event. That event has defined me as the person I am today. Yes or no? Now, the research on memory says after a period of time, that story that they tell of their past, 50% of it isn't even the truth. So they're making stuff up. They are reliving a miserable life they never even had, just to reaffirm, to recreate the emotions, to excuse themselves from changing. So then most people then, they may say with the 5% of their conscious mind, I want a new life, I want a new relationship, I want a new career, or I am healthy. But if 95% of who they are is subconsciously programmed into the past, then that thought of their health, that thought of their wealth is never going to make it to the body, because the body is programmed into the past. How many people understand? So then if you teach a person then
how to be defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past, then they would have to really start thinking differently. Would you agree? They would have to start making different choices than the choices that they always make. Yes or no? They're going to have to start doing different things and breaking certain habits. And that's going to be uncomfortable. Yes or no? Because the body's going to say, why are we doing this? It's so much more fun suffering than going out for a walk into joy. I don't know if I believe in joy. I believe in suffering. The body goes back. And so then a person would have to stop talking certain ways. They would have to start staying away from certain experiences with certain people. You know what I'm talking about, yes? And they would have to examine their emotional state every single day. They'd have to stay conscious of their emotional state, because the moment they started feeling suffering, they just disconnected from the energy of their future. They're back to the energy and the emotions of their past. So then, teaching people then how to be defined by a vision of the future every single day means they're going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be unfamiliar. There's going to be some uncertainty, and you may not be able to predict the next moment because you're no longer feeling like you. That's the moment you just left the known and you stepped into the unknown. Are you with me still? Now, if the body has been conditioned into the familiar past or the predictable future, and the body has become the mind of the past or the predictable future, would you agree then the body would say, what are you doing? And the body would say, listen, let's get you thinking like you've been thinking. And it starts influencing the mind. And people start hearing the chatter in their head. And if you respond to just one of those same thoughts, you know, like, start tomorrow, you'll never change, it's your ex's fault, it's your mother's fault. If you respond to one of those same familiar thoughts, those same thoughts lead to those same choices, which lead to the same behaviors and create the same experiences and produce the same emotions. A person says, oh, this feels right, this feels better to me. No, they're back to the same comfortable self. Yes or no? And this is why change is so hard. So then, new thoughts should lead to new choices should lead to new behaviors should create new experiences, and new experiences create new emotions. Yes or no? And our research shows that people who do that in 4 days, they change their gene expression. 4 days. 4 days. And don't you know, I know in the first day they don't want to do it, and they want to go back to laying down, and they hate me, and they're going to write an email, you know, I'm a liar, you know, all that stuff. They want to quit, you know. And I want you to know that there's no such thing as a bad meditation. There's just you overcoming you. And you can do it now, or you can wait. But now is the new later. So then, if your personality creates your personal reality, give me a nod, and your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel, then the present personality called you, raise your hand, has created the present life called your personal reality, yes or no? But if you begin over time to become conscious of your unconscious thoughts, you become aware of your automatic behaviors, how you speak, how you act, and you can look at an emotion and say, my goodness, I didn't even know this was guilt. It just has felt like me my entire life. Would you agree then, the more conscious you become of those unconscious states of mind and body, the less unconscious you'll go during your waking day? Yes or no? So then most people try to create a new personal reality, a new life as the same person, as the same personality, and it doesn't work. you literally have to become someone else. So if 95% of who you are by the time you're 35 years old is a set of memorized behaviors, unconscious habits, automatic emotional reactions, hardwired beliefs, perceptions, attitudes that are functioning automatically like a subconscious computer program, then in order for you to change, you got to get into the operating system where those automatic programs exist and become familiar with them. Yes or no? And you know, as you begin to observe those thoughts, become aware of those actions, notice those feelings, all of a sudden you're no longer immersed in the program. Your consciousness, you're no longer unconscious, you're conscious and aware. And you begin to objectify your subjective self. And if meditation means to become familiar with, then the more familiar you become with, I can't, I want to quit, this is too hard, the more aware that that is a thought standing in the way between you and something that you truly want, you'll listen less to that voice in your head in your waking day. Would you agree? And if you just said, God, it's 10 o'clock. I haven't complained all morning. It's getting really hard. I just want to stop that lady and just suffer and complain with her just about something. If you became conscious that your body wanted to do that, would you agree then that would be a victory in your day? And those victories add up. Would you agree? And what if, you associate that person that's your best friend with suffering, and the moment you see them, your body just goes, oh, this is going to be so good. Stimulus, I'm waiting for the response. The body is going to start saying, complain, complain, complain. And the brain's going to start complaining. You catch yourself doing that, that's a victory too.
Most of our thoughts and feelings come from our past experiences. They come from our memories. In fact, your brain is organized to reflect everything you know in your life. Your brain is a record of all the things you've learned and experienced to date. It's an artifact. And when you have an experience, when you're in the midst of an experience, all of your 5 senses plug you into the external environment. And as your brain is processing all of this vital sensory data, all of that information rushes back to the brain. And when it reaches the brain, it causes jungles of neurons to organize themselves into networks, to string into patterns, to reflect their interaction with their external environment. The moment those neurons organize into patterns, the brain makes a chemical, and that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And so experiences tend to create more long-term memories, because it patterns or stamps or embosses networks of neurons into very specific patterns, and then the emotional quotient helps us to remember the event. So we learn something new intellectually, we also cause networks of neurons to form. I mean, the Nobel Prize laureate Kandel in the year 2000 found that when people learned just one bit of information, they doubled the number of connections in their brain from 1,300 connections to 2,600 connections. So if they didn't review that information or repeat it, the connections pruned apart. So we know then that learning semantic information begins to organize circuitry in the brain, and experiences enrich the brain. The end product of experience, of course, is the emotion, and it causes us to feel certain ways. You can remember where you were on 9/11. You can tell me who you were with, what time of day it was, what you were doing, because whatever you were seeing in that moment or hearing in that moment changed how you were feeling. And the moment you felt altered or you felt differently, significantly, your brain perked up and you paid attention to whatever caused that. And that event in and of itself is called a memory. So then most of our thoughts and feelings tend to be within the neural circuitry of the past and the emotions of the past chemically. So if you take a thought, thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body. And how you think and how you feel creates a state of being. So if you combine a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, and you have a series of good thoughts that are connected to a series of good feelings, that cycle of thinking and feeling creates what's called an attitude. If you have a series of negative thoughts that are connected to some pretty bad feelings, you'll say, I have a pretty bad attitude today. So if how you think and how you feel creates a state of being, then attitudes are just shortened states of being. You can feel good in the morning, you can feel bad in the afternoon. If you take an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, and you begin to string attitudes together, when you combine an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, you start to form what's called beliefs. Now, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again until you hardwire it in your brain. And because beliefs are based on past experiences, then the very boundaries of our beliefs are how we feel. And so when our beliefs get challenged, it typically doesn't feel right. I know from the research that we've done that the redundancy of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking over time. For example, a person has an insecure thought, then they feel insecure. The moment they feel insecure, they think more insecure thoughts. They fire and wire more circuits in their brain to feel more chemicals of insecurity, and then once they're feeling insecure, they think more insecure thoughts, and they do this for over and over again. The redundancy and the repetition of that cycle over time conditions the body to subconsciously become the mind. Once the body becomes the mind, that's called a habit. Turns out that 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old are a set of habituations, unconscious thoughts, unconscious behaviors, unconscious emotional reactions that function like a subconscious computer program. So back to beliefs. An attitude, an attitude, an attitude are shortened states of being. And you combine them together then a belief then, the cycle of thinking, feeling over time, creates a subconscious state of being. So all beliefs are subconscious states of being. We have beliefs about God, about spirituality, about health, about relationships, about love, and all of those are based on our past experiences, but the majority of those beliefs, we don't even know that we believe them because we think they're true, because they're not functioning primarily in the conscious mind. If you take a belief, a belief, a belief, and you stack them together, you start to form what's called perceptions. And perceptions have everything to do with the relationships we have, the things we create, the behaviors we demonstrate, the choices we make in our relationships. Why is that important? Because then if beliefs are subconscious states of being, and you're stringing beliefs together, then most people are viewing their life through the lens of the past, unconsciously. And they are filling in reality. They're seeing reality. They're filling it in from their past memory. We know this to be true because they did an amazing experiment where they took a group of people and they had them wear these lenses. And the lenses were divided in half. And when they looked to one side, they saw one color. And they looked to another side, they saw another color. And they said to them, okay, well, wear these glasses every day for 2 weeks. Take your kids to school, do all the things you do at work, go shopping, work out, live your life. At the end of 2 weeks, they brought those people back into the lab and they said, look to the left, what color do you see? I said, we don't see a color. Look to the right, what color do you see? We don't see a color. Now, it says a couple things. Number one, the eyes don't see. The brain sees. But more emphatically important is that those people were filling in their external reality based on their memory in their brain. If they were truly seeing, they would be seeing those colors, right? So then, in our perceptions then, we are overlaying our future. We're overlaying the present moment with our memory of the past. And so then, that then begins to diminish possibility. And it begins to close down the way that we can begin to navigate and function in our lives. In order for us to change any belief or perception about ourselves and our lives, we have to make a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carries a level of energy that's greater than the hardwired programs in the brain and the emotional conditioning in the body, and the body has to respond to a new mind. In other words, the choice becomes an experience
that the person never forgets, because the internal experience begins to reorganize the circuitry in their brain and send a new emotional signature in their body. And in that moment, the person is becoming liberated from the past. How can the preacher in the deep south of the United States move into a state of religious faith and drink strychnine and have no biological effects? Or the mother whose child is trapped under the car, who lifts up the car and pulls the child out. The mother doesn't say, geez, I didn't work out in 2 weeks, or God, I ate carbohydrates yesterday. She's not in any polarized state. She moves into a state of absolute certainty. And it's energy that lifts that car up, because energy is the epiphenomenon of matter. And when she makes that change internally, her body is literally responding to a new mind. So then in order for us to change our beliefs about spirituality, about money, about God, about relationships, we have to come out of our resting state, and the experience inwardly has to be transcendent or greater than any past experience. And that's when biology begins to change. Now, going from that old self to the new self is the biological, the neurological, the chemical, the hormonal, the genetic death of the old self. And most people, they step out into that unknown and it feels so uncomfortable, they can't predict it, they return back to the known. People say to me, well, I can't predict my future. And I always say to them, well, the best way to predict your future is to create it, not from the known, but from the unknown. And that void, that unknown, is the perfect place to create from. Now, why is this dangerous? Because when you're living in survival 70% of the time, there's better chances in survival from running from the unknown than embracing the unknown, right? If there's a predator out there, you hear something around the corner and you can't see it, that's an unknown. You're going to run. You're not going to go, and it's not a time to trust. It's not a time to open your heart. It's not a time to communicate. Here, kitty, kitty. It's not a time to do that. It's time to run. You'll never trust the unknown in that state. So if people are living by these emotional states of survival, they're never going to want to step out into the unknown because they can't predict the future. So they'd rather hold on to what they have. Turns out that those emotions of stress are highly addictive. They give us a rush of adrenaline, rush of energy. And so people use the problems and conditions in their lives to reaffirm their addiction to that emotion so they can remember who they are as a somebody. So then, if your thoughts can turn on the stress response, and those stress chemicals are addictive, then we become addicted to our own thoughts. So then stepping out into that unknown is where true greatness happens, because that's where the person begins to say, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? What behaviors will I want to demonstrate in my new life? Can I rehearse them in my mind? And the mere process of mental rehearsal, this is neuroscience now, begins to install the circuits in your brain to look like the experience has already occurred. You're priming your brain into the map of the future instead of the record of the past. And then the true person who's in the process of transformation will say, can I teach my body emotionally what that future is going to be like? Can I begin to embrace the joy of my new life? And their body, as their unconscious mind, begins to believe it's in the future instead of in the past. Now, that process is not an overnight process. We don't jump from the old self to the new self. It requires that continuous process of changing our biology. But I can tell you, in observing people who have healed themselves of very serious health conditions, who've healed themselves of some pretty difficult scars from the past, who've overcome addictions, who've created new opportunities and new jobs and new relationships and a new life, had to cross that river. And that is when they're literally, from a biological standpoint, a new personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. And your personality is made of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So the present personality who's sitting here today has created the present personal reality called their life. Which means then, if you want to create a new personal reality, you got to change your personality. And that means you got to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. Look at your unconscious habits and behaviors, what you say, what you do, and become conscious of it. And change them. and look at the emotions that have kept you anchored to the past and decide if those emotions belong in your future. And I think the biggest problem is that most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. So then as we begin to demystify this, and the person starts to say, oh my God, the disease that I have is because it's connected to this personality. Is it possible that if I change my personality, just like a person with the multiple personality disorder, who has an allergy to nylon stockings in one personality and type 1 diabetes in another, is it possible then if I change my personality, that the disease exists in the old personality and I'm literally someone else? Is it possible then from a biological standpoint that they're healed and changed? So to answer the question, it's difficult because we're breaking out of a biological mold. It's difficult because most people don't know that they have within their reach all the tools to do it, because they have, number 3, been conditioned on some level to believe that the new hairstyle or the new type of beer they're going to drink or the sports car or whatever it is going to change their state. Right. And that's the hypnosis. And when I wrote The Placebo, You Are the Placebo, the biggest thing that I walked away with after writing that book was how hypnotized and programmed we really are. And that's bothered me ever since I wrote the book, because people watch things in their external environment and they accept, believe, and surrender to that information without any analysis, and they're programmed. And so when you and I start waking up and say no to those programs, and we start to think that we're maybe a little bit more unlimited than we're given credit for, and it's not driven for profits or self-interest, but when people start to wake up and say, hey, I healed myself of this condition, I healed myself of Parkinson's, I healed myself of lupus, I've healed myself of cancer, I've healed myself of rheumatoid arthritis, I've healed myself of chronic pain, I healed myself of food allergies. Hey, yeah, I was abused as a child, yeah, that's right, I was beat up by a violent father, and I lived in vulnerability and fear for the last 25 years, but that fear has signaled the wrong gene, and I developed this genetic condition that doctors said I had no way of healing. But when I overcame that fear and I broke out of it, I started to signal new genes in new ways, and that disease doesn't exist. Let me tell you, if you listen to that woman's story, and you listen to all the trials that she had gone through, and how she overcame herself, and she reached a place of such wholeness and self-satisfaction that she could care less if she had the disease, and that's the moment it went away, and you listen to that story, it's going to give you permission on some level that it's possible for you to do the same. You see someone dance the salsa well, you'll dance the salsa better. You see someone hit a golf ball like Rory, you'll hit a golf ball better. You see someone lead with love and compassion in their life, you will lead with love and compassion in your life. You see someone stand on a stage in front of 500 people and talk about how they overcame their cancer after their husband committed suicide, and the 3 years that it took her to do it, you will be inspired that it's possible for you. So then it has to start with a new consciousness, and that it's going to come from common people doing the uncommon. And I believe that you don't have to be a Buddhist monk, you don't have to be a nun with 40 years of devotion, you don't have to be a religious scholar, you don't have to be a researcher, you don't have to have a PhD to do this. That common people around the world can do the uncommon. And if they're given the right understanding and the environment is set up where they can begin the application of that. And I have looked at over 1,000 brain scans of people in meditation. And I can tell you that you and I are at our absolute best when we get beyond our analytical mind. When we get beyond ourselves. That's the moment that the brain gets so organized and so coherent. The front of the brain's talking to the back of the brain, the right side of the brain's talking to the left side of the brain. There's this synchronization, this psychic union going on.
Like a flow.
And the person has tears of joy rolling down their face. That gestalt moment, that transcendent event for the person is completely subjective. But my interest is measuring that subjective experience.
True.
And we're capturing amplitudes of energy in people's brains
that are 26,000 to 40,000 times normal during that experience. Now, they can't make their brain do that. It's happening to them. And the inner event that's happening to them is more real than any past event. And that's the moment I know their belief is changing.